Fame can buy you a lot of things, but not freedom. Does being a celebrity prisoner in your cell block give you special treatment, or put a big flashing target on your back? On today's episode of the Infographics Show, we're showing what really happens to celebrities in prison. Sometimes rich and famous people go to prison. We know it's not a super common thing in this two-tiered justice system we experience on this hell called Earth, but occasionally it does happen. Normally, it's from substance abuse issues, hiding away millions from the tax man, insider trading, sometimes truly horrific crimes that we'll get into a little later. But to see just how different things are for celebrity convicts, we need to go straight to the source, the incarcerated celebrities themselves. Take reality star Todd Chrisley. Yeah, don't worry, we'd never heard of him either. The real estate dynamo and star of his own shockingly popular show Chrisley Knows Best proved that Chrisley actually didn't know best. He and his wife made millions on a massive fraud and tax evasion scheme, and then got caught red-handed. Prior to getting off on a presidential pardon in 2025, he was seemingly doomed to spend a 12-year sentence in jail, and he was having a pretty awful time in there. There was always a threat of violence. One fellow prisoner snapped a photo of him, figuring Chrisley's relatives, the ones not behind bars, had enough real estate money to pay a ransom. The photo was sent to his daughter alongside with a note demanding $2,600 in monthly protection money to avoid the wealthy reality star having a little accident while he was inside. This is one interesting and disturbing example of the kind of dangers that specifically a celebrity can face in jail. While danger, intimidation, and blackmail are a problem for the general prison population, you won't see something like this happening for the average Joe. And speaking of reality stars getting chewed up by prison life, no one has had it rougher than Joe Exotic, the self-styled Tiger King from Netflix's gloriously trashy 2020 docuseries. The big cat entrepreneur turned out to also be a career criminal as well as a generally weird and unpleasant guy. He tried to get a contract killer to murder his business rival and was sent to the clink for his trouble. His famous yet leathery face has caused him no end of strife in prison. According to his own accounts, he's been attacked by coordinated gangs of fellow prisoners in jail for seemingly little more reason than relieving maddening prison boredom. He also has metastasizing prostate cancer that seems to be eating him away from the inside, making it doubtful that he'll live all the way through his sentence. But his fame has won him no favors on that front. A lot of famous prisoners convicted of non-violent crimes will end up in so-called club-fed prisons, minimum security with more amenities than you would expect at a prison for more hardcore offenders. Holly Coleman, an executive who defrauded nearly $1 million from tech companies she worked for, attended one of those club-fed prisons and described it like this. It's like a very run-down school. All the accommodations are concrete floors with pipes overhead. There will be cinder block half walls, and each of these cubicles are the living facilities. There's 4 women per cubicle in bunk beds. There's 4 lockers, 2 plastic chairs, and 1 writing desk. You really have to make your own time. It is very monotonous. Doesn't exactly sound like being forced into stress positions while having your ears blown out by Barney the Purple Dinosaur at Guantanamo Bay. But when you stack the average prison experience against the luxury most celebrity inmates are used to, it's no wonder it feels torturous. Then again, money and privilege have a way of dulling the pain. Some celebrities choose to hire prison consultants. Yes, that is a thing. These are experts who have either worked in the prison industry or been an inmate themselves. They can answer any questions the celebrity might have and give advice on how to minimize bad times behind bars. Of course, these services are technically available to everyone, but you'll have a lot easier time affording it as a Hollywood bigwig. One prison consultant advises their clients that they are often more likely to get trouble from guards than from fellow cons, many of whom are just trying to keep their heads down and serve their time. The prison staff might feel a little more tempted to exercise their power over a prisoner who could buy and sell them on the outside. Prison power dynamics are a hell of a drug, much like the cocaine that lands many of those stars in jail in the first place. Some celebrities actually have a shockingly chill time while in prison, though it's often unclear whether it's a result of their celebrity or just having an unusually positive outlook on life. Take Real Housewives of New Jersey star Teresa Giudice, who got sentenced to 15 months in prison for taking part in her husband's bankruptcy fraud scheme. She said of the prison where she served her time, Federal Correction Institute Danbury, "My roommate was a politician. There were doctors and lawyers. There was a lot of cool people there. The grounds were so beautiful. The scenery was so beautiful." Just imagine that in an obnoxiously thick New Jersey accent for a more realistic mental picture of the moment. Lifestyle guru and stock fraudster Martha Stewart said prison was overall an unpleasant and undignified experience that should only be reserved for murderers. But she did have plenty of positive memories of her time inside. For her, the recreational time that she was afforded in her minimum security jail allowed her to pick up some new hobbies and revive a few old ones that she kept putting off. In her own words, "Even when I went away for 5 months, I got through it. I learned how to crochet, and I re-upped my ceramics there. We had this fabulous ceramic studio, and I made an entire creche scene. That's my best memory." Mean Girls star Lindsay Lohan definitely had an extremely easy ride in her short-term prison sentence for probation violation. During her long period of struggles with substance abuse, she got unmitigated access to her medications, her own private cell, which is an extreme rarity even among celebrity prisoners, the opportunity to order in food from the outside, and the privilege of seeing visitors outside of normal hours, which is basically unheard of. Clearly, the folks at that prison wanted to get rid of her as soon as possible because after serving only 2 weeks of her sentence, she was let out due to prison overcrowding. That tends to happen when you give everyone their own private cells. Speaking of private cells, the woman locked up right next to Lindsay was Alexis Nyers, reality TV star and member of the notorious Bling Ring, the crew that once broke into Lohan's own house. And despite this seeming like a pretty severe crime, Alexis was only serving a 6-month sentence. We assume a normal person robbing a bunch of rich houses in LA would likely have the book thrown at him. Alexis, like Lindsay, also got some pretty exceptional treatment in jail and was exempt from many of the obligations of her less famous fellow inmates. She only served a month of her sentence before being released, and a character based on her was played by Emma Watson in 2013's The Bling Ring. But most of these feel like eternities in prison compared to what Khloe Kardashian got for her DUI. She was in prison for only 3 hours before being let out due to overcrowding, a privilege that would have likely not been afforded to a normal person like you. It's entirely possible she spent more time on the trip to and from prison that day than she did inside of her cell. And even if you don't have an easy time in prison, being famous and wealthy can give you some privileges in jail that a normal person could just never dream of. O.J. Simpson spent some time in prison, no, not for what you're thinking of, completely unrelated crimes. When you're one of the most famous acquitted murder suspects on Earth, you are basically a trophy target in prison, or so O.J. feared. It was rumored he used money from the book If I Did It about the crime he totally didn't do to hire his own private security. A lot of prisoners end up in SOMP, or Sex Offender Management Program prisons, whether they're actually a sex offender or not. These sections exist to protect inmates from violence, but that means a lot of celebrity cons, the ones with targets on their backs for different reasons, end up rubbing elbows with the very predators those units were built for. Martin Shkreli, the infamous pharma bro who gouged AIDS patients before going down for securities fraud, even started a prison band with sex offenders. Whether their music is as offensive as their rap sheets is a question we hope we never get the answer to. And for a truly unique insight into the prison life of celebrities, we should look at the accounts of probably the most famous celeb prisoners, Tony Iron Man Stark himself, Robert Downey Jr. The Oscar-winning actor was once a perennial drug abuser and troublemaker who often found himself at cross purposes with the law. He was eventually sentenced to 3 years in prison back in 1999, a year of which he actually served. Something that Downey described as the worst thing that ever happened to him. And this wasn't just a case of before he got famous either. While he wasn't the box office juggernaut he is today, by the time he was sent to the Slammer, he'd already turned in acclaimed performances in Chaplin, Natural Born Killers, and Saturday Night Live. He was sentenced to North Kern State Prison in California, which was a pretty terrifying experience. Downey Jr. claimed that prisoners at different levels of security were allowed to intermingle. This meant that he was rubbing shoulders with some genuinely dangerous and violent dudes, without a $100 million Iron Man suit that could presumably protect him from improvised prison shanks. Or, in the much more poetic way he put it, quote, "You could just feel the evil in the air." There was no trouble at all because it was kind of like just being in a really bad neighborhood. There was no opportunity there, there was only threats. In the few interviews he's given about that painful ordeal, he's described a culture of violence in prison, a place where safety depended on proving you were willing to do harm. And even his Oscar-winning acting skills couldn't fake the aura of cruelty that served as currency inside North Kern State. He described it like being on a distant planet with no way home, so removed from his experience of his life on the outside. In case all of this didn't clue you in, he did not get any special treatment for his film and TV work on the outside. In one of the more mild incidents, Downey Jr. recounted leaving the showers with his underwear on backwards, which set off a chorus of laughs and jeers among the inmates, a moment he still remembers over 20 years after the fact. He was interviewed by Vanity Fair during his sentence, where he described prison life as a mix of kitchen duty and constant vigilance, trying to avoid the violence, both physical and sexual, that surrounded him. Though below the surface level, there were still certain rich man comforts he couldn't leave behind. Underneath his unassuming prison clothes, he was wearing a white Emporio Armani t-shirt and Calvin Klein boxers, a perfect metaphor of a person from a higher echelon of life being forced to spend some time down with the dregs. However, like with a lot of well-known folks in prison, the higher-ups felt a need to show that they weren't going to mete out preferential treatment. Early on in his sentence, the assistant warden read him the riot act saying, "If we have any discipline problems with you, we're going to come down on you." It probably didn't help that one of his last roles was in Natural Born Killers, where he took part in a chaotic prison riot. The establishment were probably just hoping that he wouldn't go all life imitates art on them. One thing that did work in RDJ's favor is the kind of movies that he was starring in at the time. Considering the kinds of guys trading beatings for cigarettes in jail weren't exactly into art films like Chaplin, most inmates thought he was another LA yuppie who did a little too much nose candy. If he went to jail these days, he'd probably be a very different story. His fellow inmates gave him the prison nickname Mo Downey, which he seemed to enjoy at least. Probably not many people calling you that at Hollywood cocktail parties. It took him a while to adapt to prison life because a valuable thing to know is that prisons are not created equal. Kind of like towns populated almost entirely by criminals, each prison is its own ecosystem. As a result, it has its own mini-culture, with different rules that inmates and guards learn to abide by with experience. And that is true regardless of whether you are famous or Joe Nobody. Early on, RDJ cheesed off one of his fellow cons by spitting in a sink rather than a toilet. He got cussed out for spreading his germs where other inmates would be washing their faces. He was able to start winning fellow inmates over with his winning charm, but his notoriety did create certain risks. Other inmates were seemingly eager to point to him as a living symbol for preferable treatment under prison conditions. This manifested in a number of ways, but on the smallest end, he was getting needled in line at the mess hall, with the other inmates claiming that he got bigger portions than them because of his fame. But those notions of preferential treatment were actually all in the inmates' heads. When it came to his living conditions, RDJ didn't have the prison's presidential suite. He shared a cell with 4 other prisoners in a set of 2 bunk beds, where he slept in the undesirable upper bunk on top of a thin mattress. Some inmates made trouble for him, squaring up to him and trying to get a rise, but he never took the bait. While violence is sadly a part of prison life for many people, this kind of targeted harassment was another nasty side effect of being a well-known face behind bars. According to one of Downey Jr.'s cellmates at the time, quote, "They can say Downey is protected, but like with everyone else, it's a false sense of security. You never know if the guy next to you is going to break your neck in the middle of the night while you're sleeping." Some celebrities become targets in prison, but that's often a mix of their fame and from the severity of their crimes. We can't think of a better example of this than the horrifying story of Ian Watkins, the frontman of British rock band Lost Prophets. As both a celebrity and a predator who went after young and vulnerable victims, Watkins became a 10-point buck for prisoners in the notoriously tough Wakefield prison, a place reserved for some of the worst in British crime. Watkins had been fielding off attacks for a while, narrowly surviving one in 2023 when fellow prisoners sent him to the hospital with non-life-threatening injuries. In 2025, however, the prison attackers upgraded by sending Watkins straight to the morgue. 2 prisoners cornered the disgraced rocker in a moment of vulnerability and stabbed him in the neck, setting off a spree of inflammatory headlines across the globe. While we may never know the names of the men who killed him, likely kept out of the media to avoid inspiring copycat killings, they'll have bragging rights inside jail circles for the rest of their lives, whenever they leave solitary anyway. Speaking of celebrity weirdos in prison, rapper and freak-off monster Sean Diddy Combs ran a self-help seminar in jail. The details of that seminar and what they reveal about how famous people are treated behind bars are somehow even more shocking than the fact it happened at all. During the 12 months that Combs spent in a New York lockup during his trial, he decided to put his time to good use by running a course called Free Game with Diddy. It seemed that Diddy wanted to share his secrets of success in both business and life, and that must be a pretty rich seminar to receive while you're in jail. But celebrity prisoners like Diddy have never been ones to let little things like shame let them down. According to the Surreal Course's official description, the course offers exclusive insights into the journey of Sean Diddy Combs, tracing his rise from humble beginnings to becoming a globally recognized icon and influential business mogul. The program provides a unique perspective on navigating and succeeding in the business world. We're not just telling you this because it is patently absurd. We're telling you this because it illustrates how sometimes fame can be a currency behind bars. You'll be offered opportunities that you would never otherwise get. Do you think a random middle manager serving time for tech company embezzlement gets to stand up and give TED Talks on how to land your next white-collar job? Of course not. It seems the lifestyles of the rich and famous in prison are a real crapshoot. Sometimes it'll afford allowances and opportunities that a normal prisoner would never have. Sometimes it makes them a target for other criminals looking to make a name for themselves. And sometimes they just have to serve their time and choke down the prison food like everyone else, knowing that what's waiting on the outside is a whole lot nicer than anyone sharing their cell. Celebrities might get special treatment behind bars, but what really happens when anyone first walks into prison? Watch what happens in the first 24 hours in prison to find out what the system does to break you down. Or click on this video instead.